Every year, we help tons of people sell their homes in Kansas City and leave the Kansas City metro altogether. If you're thinking about relocating to Kansas City, you're going to want to know the top 7 reasons why people are leaving the Kansas City metro. Number 6 was actually a very surprising one, and I haven't heard it before this year, so stick around for that. The number 1 reason is the crime. A lot of people do leave Kansas City because we are consistently on the top 10 lists of most dangerous cities in all of America. I think this year has been slightly better. However, even being on the list is always a negative. I recently had a client relocate here. He bought a really inexpensive home in an area that he thought was not going to be that bad. And boy, I'll tell you, consistent stories after keeping up with him, moving here after 2 years. He said, look, I can't do it anymore. This area is just too dangerous. We have drug dealers next door. This person stays up all night, shoots fireworks off in the middle of the night. Every week I'm hearing gunshots, and we live ourselves in a neighborhood in Kansas City that isn't always the safest. I have my own stories of drug dealers being very, very close to our home and close to our family, yet we still choose to live here in Kansas City because so much of the positive does outweigh the negative. We also believe that the city has been improving year over year, and we want to be a part of that improvement as we see Kansas City get better and better. But there are people who kind of move here and just say, look, I can't really take it anymore. I gotta go somewhere else. This is not what I expected. I'm gonna get out of Kansas City. So they call us to sell their house. Now, if you're looking to relocate to Kansas City, you're probably watching this from wherever you are, wondering what are some good reasons to come? What are some not good reasons to come? What are some awesome areas to live? This is the channel for you. 816-4-MOVE-KC if you want to give us a call. We get calls from you all the time for people who are looking to relocate here in order to move their families, or maybe you got a job offer here. Give us a call, 816-4-MOVE-KC. We help people like you all the time buy a house here in Kansas City. If you're someone on the other end and you're looking to sell your house and move out of the Kansas City metro, also give us a call, 816-4-MOVE-KC. We can help you list your home, get it on the market so that you can get out of here if that's what you choose to do. The number 2 reason I see people leave the Kansas City metro is because it is getting more and more crowded. There are some people who are selling their homes in Kansas City and relocating to a less densely populated area still within the Kansas City metro, but these aren't the people that I'm talking about. I'm more talking about the people who are relocating out of Kansas City altogether. I had a client who sold his home in a very, very urban area and moved out to a rural area out by Smithville Lake. I'm not counting him as one of these people who are relocating. I'm counting somebody like my latest client who sold their home in Raymore because they were making the commute from Raymore to Overland Park every single day, and they said, look, it is getting more and more crowded. I grew up in Dallas and I saw the trajectory of the city. As it grew, it was getting harder and harder to navigate the freeways. It was getting more and more crowded on the buses. It was just impossible to get around, and I see that in Kansas City now. I relocated here to Kansas City in order to get that more slow, quiet lifestyle, the small town vibe, but still having the amenities of a major metropolitan area. Look, I'm not getting that anymore. I'm sitting in traffic for most of my day trying to get to my work and back. So therefore, I am out of here. He sold his house and he relocated to rural Tennessee in order to get the peace and quiet that he really craves. There are some people who are gonna relocate here and find this a very, very small city. Like myself, I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and in relocating to Kansas City in a metro that is just slightly over 2 million, you're coming from a metro that's like 15, 16 million people. So on a scale, it is much, much smaller here in Kansas City. But there are some people who are coming here from, rural Nebraska, or maybe you're like my last client that reached out, who's coming from a smaller, denser, less dense population in Florida. Kansas City can seem pretty big and you can get the traffic. Now, as Kansas City gets more and more crowded, there are people who are simply looking to leave, and that is totally fine. And that leads to one of the reasons that people really experience this overcrowdedness is because we do have pretty poor infrastructure, especially on the Missouri side of the Kansas City metro. If you go to Johnson County, you live in a place like Overland Park or Prairie Village or Leawood, this is not necessarily going to apply to you. But if you're on the Missouri side, especially if you're in Kansas City, Missouri proper, the infrastructure and the public services here are not going to be the best. First of all, overall, if you are coming from a place like Philadelphia, or if you're coming from a place like New York, that has great public transportation. Basically, you don't need a car in order to get around. That is not Kansas City. If you move here, you will need to save money for a car, because if you don't have a car, you are going to be very, very much handicapped in getting around to different areas of the metro. You can't get to work. You can't go visit friends. You can't go do anything fun because it is a very car dependent town. But here's the issue with transportation and public infrastructure in Kansas City. Because it gets extremely cold here and extremely hot here, we do have a ton of potholes, especially on the Missouri side. They don't always get fixed in a timely manner, although I have seen it getting better year over year. So if you're going to drive your car around, then you are going to hit potholes. It's going to be something that you're going to have to avoid, especially when it gets cold here. I remember my old car, I hit a pothole so hard that I think I scraped. I don't know anything about cars, so if you do, you can comment below on exactly what I scraped. But I scraped the underside of my car really bad, and it felt like I broke something because I went over the pothole so hard. And I actually did, because part of the bumper, the front bumper, actually popped off and came off because I was driving over that pothole and I didn't see it. It was covered in some snow, and I probably went over it like 20 to 25 miles per hour. So it was not a good situation. It kind of cost me a little bit of money because I did have to go get the car repaired. Also, too, we have aging water and sewer systems. There's going to be a current like $2 to $3 million project to redo a lot of the water mains, especially near the Country Club Plaza. Another thing that you have to think about too is the electrical grid. At least in older homes, like, you know, our home is 1922 build, so the older electrical grids, we probably will have 1 or 2 power outages per winter, just because it can't really handle the strain of everybody using it. At least that's what one of my clients, who was an Evergy, which is our local energy company, that's what he told me. So that's going to be something that you're going to want to think about. Now, I want to specify, have I seen anybody cite this as the main reason that they're moving out? While I have talked to people about crime, and I have talked to people about the crowding and them citing this as the reason that they're moving out, haven't talked to somebody saying, hey, the lack of a bus is why I'm moving out of Kansas City. But it is a contributing factor to a lot of different people. I did recently have a client who did not budget to buy a car when she got here, and so she said, look, I cannot live in an area where I can't get around via bus because I really, really don't like driving, and you have to drive here in Kansas City. Now, she did get a job offer elsewhere, which we're going to talk about soon. So while the infrastructure wasn't the factor, it was certainly a contributing factor to her listing her house and leaving Kansas City. Now, speaking of jobs in Kansas City, the next reason is the lessening job market here in the Kansas City metro. Now, depending on the field that you're working in, this may not actually be the case for you, because I have plenty of, especially nurses, seem to have a very, very easy time of finding a job here in Kansas City. If you're working in the medical field, I think that's still going pretty strong. Rewinding back to when we moved to Kansas City, it was pretty easy for my wife to get a job as a nurse. In fact, it didn't take that much looking at all. She had her job, we relocated here, used her income to buy a house. So if you're in the medical field, I think that's still pretty strong. Save for a few things. We have a lot of government jobs here in Kansas City. We do have the IRS that's located right in the heart of downtown. We do have the VA hospital that's not quite downtown but near the stadiums. And I have heard from clients that they have stopped hiring in those places and in fact are letting people go. I helped a lady buy a house last year who worked for the IRS, and she called me right after she bought her home, and she said, I'm going to have to find a new job right away. What am I going to do? I just took on this house payment. They are letting me go from the IRS. Take that as you will. I think especially the federal sector in Kansas City is not hiring a lot right now. There's a lot of government layoffs. That's all going in the news. So the weakening job market is causing some people to sell their house, relocate out of Kansas City for better opportunity elsewhere. Now, speaking of better opportunity elsewhere, this is probably the main reason why people are leaving Kansas City, is because they're simply just getting better jobs in other places. I've had 5 or 6 people in the last 2 or 3 months call me just saying, look, I got a better job opportunity. While I'm here in Kansas City, I feel like there's no room for, vertical movement up the ladder for my job here in Kansas City. So I'm going to have to go to a much bigger city where I can find a much bigger company to work for in order to climb the corporate ladder. There are a lot of people who are leaving here because they just feel like it's so limiting for what they can get here in Kansas City for their job. So that ties into the job, but I would also say the lack of opportunity or the lack of better opportunities sometimes can get people to move out of Kansas City. Now, for the next reason for somebody moving out of Kansas City, this was a very interesting one. I had helped a retired couple relocate here to Kansas City about 2 to 3 months ago, and they were planning to live in Kansas City full time. They bought a beautiful house, new build in Olathe, and they decided, hey, we are going to stay here. Olathe is close enough to where our kids are. Our kids are living in Prairie Village. It's only a 20 to 30 minute drive to them. We have a little bit of space. We can stay in Olathe, build our lives here. We love Kansas City, all of that stuff. But they recently reached out to me, and now they're debating whether or not to sell their house in Olathe or to rent it out because they want to get out of Kansas City, and this is the reason they decided. There is a huge lack of natural beauty here in Kansas City. I've said this before in my videos, and this couple, they came from the Florida coast, the Gulf Coast, so I would imagine it's a lot more beautiful down there than it is in Kansas City. Myself coming from the Pacific Ocean, going to the Pacific Ocean every week, I can definitely relate to that. But they said, look, we thought we would be okay being landlocked, but we want to go somewhere where we can get very close to a beach, especially during our retirement years. Yes, our kids are here. Yes, it's cool to go 20 to 30 minutes to visit them. The largest body of water that I'm aware of is going to be Smithville Lake, and while there are areas of Smithville that are beautiful, it compares nothing to, the Gulf Shore. It compares nothing to the Atlantic Ocean, the Rocky Mountains, the Pacific Ocean. All of those areas are going to have much more natural beauty, and if you want that, if you crave that, sometimes I feel that too, growing up near the beach, going to the beach all the time, it is a bummer that you can't get to a beach without a long flight or a long drive. So I have heard people cite lack of beauty as a reason that they're moving out of Kansas City. Now, the last reason I've heard for people relocating out of Kansas City was a surprising one too, is the rising cost of living. Yes, Kansas City homes have appreciated about 4 to 5% year over year, depending on the area where you're living. However, it has gotten to the point where, $250,000 to $300,000 used to be able to get you a really nice house in Kansas City, especially a good starter home. Now I would shift the goalpost to at least $275,000 to $325,000 is going to get you something that's a 3-bed, 2-bath. And there are some people who are saying, look, I can't afford to live here anymore. I can't afford to rent here anymore. I'm going to go to a place that is much smaller. So I am currently in talks with listing a house that somebody just bought 1 year ago because he said, look, the utilities are too expensive, everything's too expensive, the groceries are too expensive, the taxes are too much. I'm going to go back home to my small rural town and try to find remote work from there. While Kansas City is known as a low cost of living area, this is an interesting fact to take in, that even some people who have lived in Kansas City for a short amount of time find it too expensive. Now, if you want to know exactly how much it costs to live in Kansas City, click on this video right here.